So I'm going to start real quick with JR because JR, last time we were on one of these sponsorship summits, you were talking about this racer who I had not met yet at that time, who did an outstanding job. And well, now he's on the call with us. Why do you sponsor Brian Brown? What did he do that was so special? How did he get your attention? What landed him the sponsorship with K1 Race Gear? Because drivers on the call want to know what they can do to copy his success.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Alex. Can you hear me okay? I just want to test on that real quick.
Yes, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, so I mean, Brian doesn't need me to blow his head up, but I'm going to a little bit here. You guys are all actually in for a bit of a how would I say it? You're lucky to have him here, and I think you guys should really pay attention to him a lot. There's a lot of guys that we could have brought on here in sprint car racing, but Brian actually owns and operates in a pretty unique space with Elite Company, being one of the only professional drivers at a very high level that owns and operates and races probably in the top 10, top 15 of every series that he competes in, and multiple time champion. I mean, you guys can start thinking about it, but those guys are very rare in this day and age. You know, that John Force was a guy that popped up in my head when I was thinking about it earlier, and he's not anymore, obviously, after last year. But I mean, you know, I guess Denny Hamlin maybe and Brad Keselowski at NASCAR, but it's a very, very small list of Elite Company. And there's a reason behind that, you know, and Brian will dive into it a little bit more, but, you know, Casey's FVP, Impact Signs, K1 Race Gear, Weld Wheels. I mean, these are guys that not only, you know, have had transformative partnerships that went beyond any traditional advertising methods with Brian, but they've also been with him for 15 to 20 years. You know, that Brian doesn't, and I'm not speaking as his manager, just as somebody who I have a very close relationship with him as well. But Brian doesn't have to seek out a whole lot of sponsorship anymore these days. I mean, he still obviously gets up and down the road. And by the way, that up and down the road for Brian is about 80 to 85 races a year. You know, I mean, when you're talking about the Outlaws and high limit racing, it's a grueling grind. And to be able to put, you know, that hauler, that team, those team members and sponsors on the road with them year in and year out, and have that kind of success is you know, it speaks to what we're talking about here. So, you know, Brian, just to give you a short story, and you and I've talked about it a little bit, Alex, was very unique in his approach. And I only say unique because it's, you know, one of the very few people that have done it, but I wish that more people did it exactly the way Brian did it. He could write the blueprint for pretty much any racer and any team looking for sponsorship. I was at the Knoxville Nationals in, I don't know, Brian and I've known each other and of each other for 15, 20 years, but we had not done business yet together. And I was an up and coming brand. And Brian walked up to me and we were standing next to his hauler, and my, you know, at Knoxville, you got a back gate there at turn 4 where all the haulers stage before they pull into the infield. And he just hopped off, came over, and, you know, like Brian does, just, you know, chatty we were BSing a little bit, and he just said to me, he said, what would move the needle for your brand? How could I do that? And this is not somebody who was wearing K1 at the time. He hadn't expressed any interest. He just said, how could I move the needle for your brand? And I was like, wow, that's an approach that not a lot of people come up. You know, normally it's a deck, it's a, hey, I'm looking for sponsorship. We're looking for, hey, you know how expensive this is. We all know. So that's a great starting point. And I happen to be looking at his rig, which if anybody in sprint car has ever seen Brian's rig, it's one of the cleanest, one of the nicest, most well-placed sponsorship advertisements rolling down the road. And I saw a distributor on the side of his car that I'd known of for a long time, was Smiley's Racing Products. And I said, you know, I'd like to get my product into, I'm looking for distribution. I want to get my product into Smiley's and Summit and Buckeye and some of these other ones. And he said, give me a minute. That was all he said to me. He said, just give me a minute. About a half hour later, he come back with Matthew Roan and Tom Lawrence from Smiley's. And he walked into my trailer and he said, you guys sit down and figure out how to make this thing a go. Never asked me for anything. And within the next week, I think I got $150 to $200,000 purchase order from those guys, and we were off and running. And of course, Brian followed that up with, okay, I need 5 suits and 5 pair of gloves. But my point is that, you know, we talk about this a bit, Alex, is that the most important thing, and I preach this on these seminars and anytime I get a chance to talk to drivers or team, is leverage. You've got leverage that you don't know about, and it might seem an unconventional route, but it's something that I think every racer really needs to pay attention to, is that, you know, you have partners that you may not know I need, or that one of your other brands needs. And Brian is an absolute master at that. He can teach a master class on it. You'll often see him at Knoxville or I-70 or at Eldora, grabbing some of his sponsors and taking them up into the booth and introducing them to one of his wheel guys and saying, hey, you know, your shirts don't look that great this year. You should call JR and talk to him about making you guys new team apparel. It's not uncommon with Brian. That's what he does when he's not in the race car. So that really, you know, he stands at the upper, at the highest level regard to sponsorship with K1, and I'm sure with the rest of his brands, because out of the, and I can tell you his brands almost by memory because I put him on his suits and his apparel every single year. They don't change, Alex and crew here. So, yeah, it speaks a little bit to what Brian's all about.